Good morning.
Good morning.
So we come together to meditate, practice simple contemplative prayer. We come here and we practice contemplation. You know, contemplation was pretty much lost in the church up until about 200 years ago. So people ask me sometimes, you know, why are you living here on the Oyster River in this kind of a simple building as a hermit? And I would say, well, my inspiration goes all the way back to Thomas Merton.
In the beginning of the Christian church, many men and women lived alone as hermits so they could devote themselves totally to the contemplation of God. This tradition had disappeared from the Catholic Church, but several modern monks have worked to bring it back. The American monk, Thomas Merton, was attempting to reconcile Eastern and Western traditions of meditation and yearned to live as a hermit. Unfortunately, he died unexpectedly just as the Church was beginning to accept the consecration of hermits to live alone outside of monasteries. In 1966, Charles Brandt became the first hermit to be ordained to the priesthood in about 200 years. This excerpt from a longer film, Hermit, focuses on Thomas Merton's influence on Charles Brandt's decision to become a pioneer of a new kind of hermit's life.
I wouldn't be here had I not read Seven Storey Mountain and had I not gone to Gethsemane and spoken briefly to Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton told me when I talked to him, he said, don't come here to Gethsemane Abbey. We can make you a good monk, but not a good contemplative.
Born in 1923, Charles came to live as a hermit priest after a long search for a meaningful way to live a contemplative life. In 1956, Charles visited Merton at Gethsemane, the Catholic abbey where Merton practiced contemplation while living with other monks. After visiting Merton, Charles entered another abbey, but after 8 years, he still did not feel ready to take his vows to be a monk. He wrote Merton again for guidance and received this letter in reply.
Dear Brother Charles, so it was good to hear from you. And I think I have a fairly clear memory of your visit, though it was long ago and I see so many people and they all merge into a blur. But your letter is a good one and I will try to answer it as best I can, simply and to the point. It has to be admitted that the monastic life as we have it in the houses of our order now leaves much to be desired. There are great possibilities and great problems. Those who want a more primitive, poor, simpler, or a more solitary, hidden, contemplative form of life and who need to deepen their life of prayer non-liturgically cannot find room to develop among us. I think the thing we have to remember is that the desire for authentic monastic solitude comes from God and not from man. But if you do come to live as a hermit somewhere, be ready for a grim time and don't expect some of the consolations that you're leaving behind. Our communities have their disadvantages, but also their advantages, and one may come to regret having to do without them. Best wishes, and God bless you. I shall be interested to hear what comes of it. Cordially yours in Christ, Frater M. Lewis.
After Merton's letter admitting to problems with trying to meditate while living in a monastery, Charles Brandt was freed to return to the ancient way of contemplating God, alone as a hermit.
So that was the letter. So that was kind of giving me permission. Now this is the main road down to the main area of the Hermitage.
The Hermetic tradition had practically fallen into disuse in the Western Church, and a movement for its restoration began. The key person, Dom Jacques Benandi, he came to me asking if it would be possible for him to start a group of hermits here on the island. Now, hermits are by definition solitary, but they tend to gather in colonies for mutual support, to have some other hermits not too far away.
And that's where the bunkhouse was, and we'd walk down the swinging bridge across the river. I don't know who lives here. Yeah, so it's really been built up a lot.
So having agreed with Dom Winandi, I was then interested when Charles Brandt wanted to become a hermit. So I was in agreement with the idea. I accepted to ordain him as well, with the specific mission of promoting the hermetical life and living it here in our midst, to be an example for the other people of the diocese that this is really a reclaiming of a very ancient tradition.
See a group of trees out there? And especially that one large tree, that's a Douglas fir. My hermitage was right in there. And it's grown up quite a bit, so my front porch was right against that tree.
Now, what's the little, is it a pink lady slipper, this one here?
That's Bleeding Heart.
Bleeding Heart.
Yeah, it has a heart-shaped flower. Can you see the heart on it?
Oh yes, okay. Yes, I do see.
Yeah.
Huh.
Charles has more than once talked about the fact that contemplation was not on the agenda, and Thomas Merton brought it back into more mainstream. I also know through rumor, only through rumor, that there were religious in this diocese who felt meditation, for example, was absolutely wrong. That was like a new age, does not belong in the Catholic Church. Absolutely does not. And Charles had to push against that in however he would push, which is sit with it, I suspect. He had to sit with that for many, many years. Now it's acceptable. But 40 years ago? Even on the West Coast.
And this was the bunk? Well, you can't really, it's pretty rough to try to live in a place like this, especially the winter when you had several feet of snow.
What does it feel like to be back here now? Well, this is 50 years later. What do you think when you're here looking at all this?
Well, I think that I'm surrounded by a camera crew.
Yes, true.
The hermit is the ultimate expression of the call we all have to meditate. Because he is articulate and competent and speaks well, he is able not only to live the hermit's life, but also to convey and to share that message with other people. And I know as a result of that, others have been encouraged to consider themselves, dedicate a little more time to simply being in quiet personal relationship with the divine.
So what Thomas Merton tells us is that at the center of our being, there's a point of nothingness, which is untouched by sin, untouched by illusion. And it's a pure glory of God in us, this point of nothingness. But it's never at our disposal. We can't get to it. You know, it's sort of in our unconscious. It's our deep, true self in Christ. And we can't really, it's not at our disposal. But it's that point from which God disposes of ourselves. So I think that's primarily what we're doing in meditation. We're putting ourselves, becoming quiet, still, and what we're really doing, we're disposing ourselves so that God can act within us. We don't know what he's going to do, what he's doing. We probably won't know until maybe 5 years from now or maybe next week. But he's working all the time because God, much more than we, wants us to be in unity with himself, and he wants us, give him a chance to work through us. So with that, we're going to meditate now for 25 minutes.
We don't have Thomas Merton here to talk to, but we do have Charles Brandt and we do have Bishop Remy DeRue. When you talk to someone in their 90s, they have such wisdom and they sit, I think he sits in peace with his life. I wonder what it would have been like to have interviewed him 40 years ago. And I think the struggle to sit in peace with his life may have looked more like Thomas Merton's writings. It was a radical life choice to come to Canada, to a hermitage on the banks of a river without the protection of a monastery around you. How do you do that with a steamer trunk and a couple of boxes? That is a step into faith.
So just one little word about walking meditation. We're going to walk out after this is over. So this is Thich Nhat Hanh. It's called the Miracle of Mindfulness. People usually consider walking on water or on thin air as a miracle. But I think the real miracle is not to walk either on water or on thin air, but to walk on earth.